If someone had told me 6 months ago that the man I was picking wedding venues with would end up telling my son I wasn't his real mother, I would have laughed. Not because it was impossible, but because I believed in us. I believed in the life we built. My name is Monica Hayes. I'm 31 years old. I work as a dental assistant at Riverwalk Family Dentistry, make about $42,000 a year before taxes, and for 5 years, I was Pedro Collins' mother. Not biologically, but in every way that matters. I met Richard Collins when I was 26. It was August, humid Texas heat that sticks to your skin like regret. I had just moved into a modest 2-bedroom duplex on the west side of San Antonio. Rent was $1,250 back then. I remember because I calculated my paycheck down to the dollar before signing that lease. Richard lived 3 houses down. Tall, broad shoulders, worn boots, that quiet blue-collar confidence. He worked construction management, pulling about $65–70K a year depending on contracts. The first time we talked, he was chasing a little boy down the sidewalk. "Pedro, stop running toward the street." Pedro. Curly dark hair, big brown eyes, Spider-Man backpack nearly bigger than him. He was 3 years old. And he was crying. I knelt down before Richard could catch him. "Hey, buddy, what's wrong?" He sniffled. "I want my mommy." Richard froze. Just for a second. Then he picked Pedro up and said, too calmly, "Mommy doesn't live here anymore." I didn't know it then, but that was the first crack in the foundation. A month into dating, Richard told me about her. Elena Vargas, Pedro's biological mother. She left when Pedro was barely 3. Packed a suitcase, said she needed freedom, said she wasn't ready for motherhood, said Richard was too controlling. Richard framed it like betrayal. She just walked out, Monica. No warning, no fight, just gone. He showed me custody papers later. She signed over primary custody. No child support, no visitation schedule. Just gone. And Pedro? He stopped asking about her after year 1, Richard said. But that wasn't true. Because I heard him whisper her name in his sleep the first year I moved in. I didn't move in immediately. I waited 8 months. By then Pedro was 4. He started calling me Mo. Then Mommy Mo. Then one night, after I read him Goodnight Moon for the 100th time, he looked at me and said, "Are you gonna stay forever?" I remember my throat tightening. "Yes," I said, "I'm not going anywhere." And I meant it. I potty trained him, packed his preschool lunches, took off work when he had a 102 degrees fever, sat through speech therapy appointments, held him during thunderstorms, paid $480 for his first pair of glasses. When Richard worked late shifts, it was me doing bath time. When he had nightmares, he ran to my side of the bed. Motherhood doesn't happen in one dramatic moment. It happens in 10,000 invisible ones. By year 3, we moved into a rented 3-bedroom house. Rent, $1,850 a month. Utilities averaged $320. Groceries around $600. After bills, we usually had about $900 $100 left monthly. We opened a joint savings account. We talked about marriage. Richard even took me ring shopping once. A modest $3,200 diamond set. Pedro would draw pictures of the 3 of us labeled. Dad. Mom. Me. Not Monica. Mom. And Richard never corrected him. Not once. It was a Tuesday in March when she came back. I remember because it was Taco Tuesday and Pedro had soccer practice. I was in the kitchen browning ground beef when someone knocked on the door. I opened it, and there she was. Elena Vargas. She looked different than I imagined. Blonde highlights, designer handbag, red lipstick, perfume strong enough to linger. "Hi," she said. Like she was returning a borrowed sweater. I'm here to see my son. My heart dropped into my stomach. I didn't slam the door. I didn't scream. I just stood there frozen. Richard came from behind me. And the look on his face. Shock. But not anger. Not fear. Shock mixed with something else. Something I couldn't name at the time. Elena, he said softly. Softly. Pedro came running into the hallway. Who is it? She crouched down. Hi, baby. He stared at her. Confused. Do I know you? Her smile faltered. I'm your mommy. Silence. Pedro looked at me. Then at Richard. Then back at her. No, he said quietly. She's my mommy. And pointed at me. I should have felt secure. Instead, I felt something shifting. Richard let her in. They sat at the dining table, while I stood at the kitchen counter, pretending to wipe something already clean. Elena said she'd been working on herself. She had moved to Austin, worked in real estate, made mistakes. She cried. Richard listened. She said she wanted to be involved now. Richard nodded. Nodded. That night, after she left, I asked him, what does this mean? He sighed. She's his real mother, Monica. There it was. Real. Like I was something artificial. Temporary. Replaceable. I tried to stay calm. I've been raising him for 5 years. And I appreciate that, he said quickly, but blood is blood. That was the first fracture between us. Elena started visiting every weekend. She brought expensive gifts. $250 Lego sets, a Nintendo Switch, new sneakers. Things we couldn't casually afford. Pedro was overwhelmed. He started asking questions. Why did she leave? Why didn't you tell me more? Do I have 2 moms? And I told him the truth. You can love both. Because love multiplies. It doesn't divide. But Richard, he started acting like I needed to step back. Let them bond. She deserves a chance. She's trying. Trying. Where was she when he had pneumonia at 5? Where was she during his first lost tooth? Where was she when he cried on Mother's Day in kindergarten because he didn't have anyone to make a card for? I was there. It happened 3 months after she returned. Pedro had just gotten back from a weekend with her in Austin. He barely hugged me. He went straight to his room. I felt it immediately. Distance. That night at dinner, Richard cleared his throat. Pedro, he said gently, Elena is your real mom. Monica has helped a lot, but it's important you understand that. I stared at him. He didn't look at me. Pedro's fork paused midair. What does that mean? He asked. It means, Richard continued, Monica isn't your actual mother. Actual. The word sliced clean. Pedro looked at me. Confused, hurt, unsure. And for the first time in 5 years. He didn't reach for my hand. I felt something inside my chest collapse. I didn't scream. I didn't throw a plate. I just stood up quietly and walked into the bathroom. Locked the door. And slid down against it. Because in one sentence. 5 years of midnight fevers, scraped knees, bedtime stories and whispered, I love yous, had been reduced to. Helped a lot. That was the moment I realized. I was never secured in this family. I was on borrowed time. And the biological clock had just struck midnight. If you've never felt a child pull away from you, let me explain what it feels like. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's quiet. It's the absence of something that used to be there. And in our house on Maple Ridge Drive, that absence started spreading like a crack in drywall. Slow, thin, then impossible to ignore. It happened on a Thursday. Soccer practice pickup. Normally, Pedro would run off the field yelling, Mom, did you see my goal? That day, he jogged over slower. I smiled anyway. You were amazing out there." He nodded. "Thanks, Monica." I swear my brain didn't process it at first. Monica. Not Mom. Not Mommy. Just Monica. Like I was the babysitter. I laughed softly. "What's with the formal name?" He shrugged, didn't look at me. "Elena said it might be confusing if I call two people Mom." There it was. Confusing. Like love was a math problem. I buckled his seatbelt quietly. My hands were shaking so hard I had to redo it twice. Elena started showing up more. At first it was weekends. Then weekday dinners. Then soccer games. She'd stand there in expensive sunglasses, Lululemon leggings, manicured nails, acting like she never missed 5 years of his life. One afternoon, she brought Pedro a brand new iPad Pro. $799, brand new. We'd been telling him for months we'd save up for one at Christmas. He looked at it like it was treasure. I looked at Richard. "Is this really necessary?" I asked later in the kitchen. "She's just making up for lost time." "With electronics." He exhaled heavily. "Why does everything have to be a competition with you?" Competition. That word again. Like I was fighting for territory. I was. I was fighting for stability. You want to know when I started losing Richard? It wasn't when she came back. It was when he started defending her more than me. One night after Pedro went to bed, I said, "I feel pushed out." He rubbed his forehead. "You're being dramatic." I raised him, Richard. And I'm grateful. Grateful. Like I donated furniture. "You're not his real mother, Monica." There it was again. This time sharper. More intentional. "I never said I was biologically," I whispered. "But that matters to him now," he replied. And that sentence told me everything. It mattered to him too. Pedro stopped crawling into my bed during thunderstorms. Stopped asking me to read. Started texting Elena instead. Once, I walked past his room and heard him on FaceTime. "Yeah, Mom," he said. "Mom." To her. I stood there in the hallway, like someone had knocked the air out of me. 5 years. 5 birthdays, 5 Christmas mornings, 5 scraped knees, 3 emergency room visits, 2 school suspensions, 1 broken arm. And suddenly I was a placeholder. It exploded on a Sunday. Elena had taken Pedro to Austin again. When they came back, he barely acknowledged me. He walked straight past and said, "Elena's house is way bigger than ours." Ours? Like I wasn't part of it anymore. Later that night, I confronted Richard. "This isn't healthy." "What is?" "You're letting her erase me." He laughed, actually laughed. "No one's erasing you." She told him it's confusing to call me Mom. She's not wrong. That was the moment something snapped inside me. I was there when she was. And she's here now. Simple. Dismissive. Final, 3 weeks later. We were sitting at the dining table. Spaghetti, garlic bread, normal Tuesday. Richard cleared his throat. "Pedro, your mom wants to talk about you staying with her part-time." My fork froze. "What?" I said quietly. Richard ignored me. Pedro looked nervous. Like half and half. Elena smiled across the table, like she'd already won something. "Yes, baby, you deserve both your parents." Parents. Plural. I swallowed. "And what am I?" I asked. Silence. Richard finally looked at me. "You'd still be around." Around. Like background noise. Like wallpaper. Pedro looked at me. And this is the moment that broke me. "Monica," he said softly, "it doesn't mean I don't like you." Like. Not love. Like. Something in my chest physically hurt. I stood up from the table. No screaming. No scene. Just quiet devastation. I need some air, I said. And I walked out of the house barefoot. I drove to my sister Samantha's apartment. 1 bedroom, north side, $1,400 rent, smelled like lavender candles and safety. She opened the door and immediately knew. "Oh no," she whispered. I didn't speak. I just collapsed into her arms. I slept on her couch that night. And the next. And the next. Richard texted once. "You can't just abandon us." Abandon. That word hit like a slap. I abandoned them. After 5 years. After bedtime stories and fever checks and PTA meetings. I didn't reply. Because for the first time, I was asking myself something terrifying. If I wasn't his real mother, what was I? And how long had I been living in someone else's temporary role? I didn't go home for 4 days. 4 days of sleeping on Samantha's beige IKEA couch. 4 days of staring at the ceiling fan spinning like my thoughts. 4 days of trying to understand how I became disposable in my own life. Samantha didn't push. She just brought me coffee every morning and said, "You can stay as long as you need." That sentence alone felt safer than anything Richard had said in weeks. It was Tuesday night when my phone rang. "Pedro." I froze. I hadn't heard his voice since I walked out. I stepped onto Samantha's tiny balcony before answering. "Hey, buddy." Silence. Then a sniffle. "Monica." Not Mom. But softer than before. "Yeah, I'm here." Did I do something wrong? That question sliced straight through me. "No, never. You didn't do anything wrong." "I thought you were mad." "I'm not mad at you." Another pause. "I don't like the new schedule." My heart skipped. "What schedule?" "Dad said I might live with Alina some days. She said I'll have my own room and stuff, but I don't want to pack my stuff." My chest tightened. "Have you told your dad that?" "He says it's grown-up decisions." Grown-up decisions. Made without the person who raised him. "I miss you," he whispered. And there it was. Not like. Miss. I pressed my forehead against the cool railing. "I miss you too. Can you come home?" Home. I didn't know what that word meant anymore. "I'll see you soon, okay?" He hesitated. "Okay, Mom." He said it quietly, like he wasn't sure he was allowed to. But he said it. And I broke down after I hung up. The next morning, there was a knock on Samantha's door. Hard. Aggressive. Samantha looked through the peephole and muttered, "You've got to be kidding me." Richard. Jaw tight, eyes red, still in his work boots. She opened the door halfway. "You can't just take off," he said immediately. I didn't take off, I left. "You left Pedro." "He's not my son, remember?" His face darkened. "That's not what I meant." "It's exactly what you meant." He stepped inside without being invited. Samantha crossed her arms. "You don't get to storm in here. This isn't your business." It became my business when my sister showed up crying. I had never seen Richard look so irritated. He turned back to me. "Pedro's confused. He thinks you left because of him." My stomach twisted. "That's not what I told him." "Then what did you tell him?" "That I needed space." "You're being selfish." Selfish. The audacity almost made me laugh. For 5 years, I put that child first. I adjusted my schedule. I turned down a promotion so I could pick him up from school. I paid for his braces consultation out of my savings. And now I'm selfish. Richard's jaw clenched. "You're making this harder than it has to be." "No, you and Alina are." Then he dropped it. "Alina's filing for custody modification." The words hit like ice water. "She can't just." "She can. She's his biological mother." I stared at him. "So what happens to me?" He didn't answer right away. That silence was louder than anything he could have said. You'd still be part of his life. Still be. Future tense. Optional. Temporary. Like I was some extended relative. I want to take Pedro for the weekend, I said suddenly. Richard blinked. What? He called me crying. I want him with me this weekend. He's staying here. With Alina coming in and out whenever she wants. She's his mother. And what have I been? His patience snapped. You've been helpful. Helpful. That was the word that ended us. Helpful. Like a nanny. Like an assistant. Like unpaid labor. Something in me shifted permanently. I'm picking him up Friday, I said calmly. You're not taking my son. My son. Ownership now. Possession. Watch me. I showed up at the house at 3:15 p.m. Same driveway, same mailbox, same home I painted yellow last summer. Pedro ran to the door before I even knocked. Mom. This time, he didn't hesitate. He hugged me so tight my back popped. Richard stood behind him. Expression hard. You get the weekend, he said stiffly. Alina knows. His eyes flickered. She doesn't need to. That told me everything. This wasn't about what was best for Pedro. This was about control, Saturday evening. Pedro was at Samantha's, playing video games. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. Alina. Her voice was smooth. Controlled. You took him without discussing it. Richard agreed. That's not your place. I let the silence stretch. My place. I've had a place in his life for 5 years. You were filling in. Filling in. Like a substitute teacher. Temporary by design. You don't get to rewrite history, I said quietly. He deserves clarity. He deserves stability. He deserves his real mother. There it was. I felt strangely calm. You disappeared. I was young. He was 3. She inhaled sharply. That's between me and Richard. And Pedro. Silence. Then she said something that chilled me. If you keep inserting yourself, this will get ugly. Click. She hung up. Sunday night when I brought Pedro back, Richard was waiting outside. Alone. Alina's furious, he said. Good. She thinks you're trying to turn him against her. I'm not. She wants to limit your involvement. My chest tightened. She doesn't get to decide that. She can if she pushes legally. I stepped closer. And you'll let her. He didn't answer. That silence again. The same one from before. The one that tells you everything. I gave up so much for this family, I said. No one asked you to. That was the moment. The final fracture. Because he was right. No one asked me. I chose to love that child. I chose to sacrifice. I chose to build a life around them. And now I was being reminded that I chose it alone. Pedro came outside with his backpack. He looked between us. Tension thick. Are you fighting because of me? He asked. No, we both said at the same time. But kids always know. He hugged me. Will you still come to my soccer game next week? I looked at Richard. He looked away. I'll always show up for you, I told Pedro. Always. Even if I had to stand in the parking lot. Even if I wasn't allowed in the house. Even if I was reduced to helpful. As I drove away, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just about Alina reclaiming space. This wasn't just about Richard's ego. This was about legality. And legally, I was nothing. No adoption. No paperwork. No guardianship. 5 years. And I had no rights. And Alina knew that. The first thing I did Monday morning was call in sick. I've never been someone who misses work. At Riverwalk Family Dentistry, I'm the one who shows up early, preps trays, makes sure Dr. Patel has everything lined up before the first patient walks in at 8:00 a.m. But that morning, I couldn't focus on fluoride treatments and insurance forms. I needed answers. Because Richard was right about one thing. Legally, I was nothing. Samantha found the attorney. Family law office downtown, frosted glass doors, $150 consultation fee for 30 minutes. Her name was Angela Morris. Mid-40s, sharp blazer, no-nonsense voice. I told her everything. 5 years, no adoption, no legal guardianship, shared finances, school records listing me as emergency contact, medical paperwork signed by me dozens of times. She listened quietly. Then she folded her hands. Monica, in Texas, biological rights carry significant weight. I swallowed. What does that mean for me? It means unless you legally adopted him or were granted conservatorship, your standing is very limited. Limited. The word echoed. But I raised him. I don't doubt that, she said gently. But courts prioritize biological parents unless there's abuse or neglect. Alina left for 5 years. Yes, but she signed over primary custody to Richard, not to you. That distinction hit like a brick. So if she files for shared custody, she likely has a case. And me. You could attempt to argue psychological parent status. My chest tightened. But it's expensive, and it's uphill. How expensive? Retainer would start around $5,000, and it could easily reach $15,000 to $20,000 depending on litigation. I had $9,300 in savings. Half of that was technically joint. The room felt smaller, so I could lose him. Angela didn't sugarcoat it. Yes, that Wednesday, I went to the house to pick up some of my clothes. Richard wasn't home yet. Pedro was in his room. I walked in quietly. Then I heard voices from the kitchen. Richard. And Alina. She met with a lawyer, Alina said. How do you know? She posted something vague about knowing your rights. I'm not stupid. Richard sighed. She's not trying to take him. She doesn't have the right. She's been in his life. She was filling a gap. Gap. Again. She's attached. She'll get over it. My stomach dropped. I stood there frozen in the hallway. She needs to understand she's not his real mother, Alina continued. And if she pushes this legally, we'll make sure she regrets it. Regrets it? My hands started shaking. Pedro's bedroom door creaked open behind me. He had heard it too. Our eyes met. And I saw it. Confusion. Fear. Betrayal. He looked at me like he didn't know who to believe anymore. That night, he asked me something that shattered me. Are you going to leave forever? We were sitting on his bed. The glow-in-the-dark stars still stuck to his ceiling from when he was 5. I don't want to, I said honestly. Dad says things are changing. Do you want them to change? He shook his head. I don't want to choose. That was the part no one seemed to understand. He wasn't asking for biological clarity. He wanted emotional safety. And the adults were ripping it apart. It happened 3 days later. Friday evening. I came over to talk. Actually talk. No yelling. No accusations. Just clarity. Pedro was at a sleepover. Alina wasn't there. Just Richard and me in the kitchen. I spoke to a lawyer, I told him. His expression darkened immediately. So you're serious about this? I'm serious about protecting my relationship with him. You're overstepping. I raised him. You chose to. There it was again. You keep saying that like it erases what I did. He slammed his hand against the counter. It doesn't erase it, but it doesn't make you his mother. My voice cracked. What does then? Blood. One word. Final. Cold. And something inside me broke clean in half. 5 years, I whispered. 5 years of loving him like he was my own. You're not his real mother, Monica. This time, he didn't soften it. Didn't cushion it. He said it like a fact. And that's when I realized. This wasn't about Alina anymore. This was about how he saw me. Replaceable. Convenient. Temporary. I told him I was ending it. Right there in the kitchen. I can't marry someone who reduces me to helpful. He laughed bitterly. You're blowing up our family. I'm not the one who started this. You walked out. After you erased me. His temper snapped. You're not taking him from me. I'm not trying to. You don't get to play mom anymore. Play. Like it was pretend. I felt the air leave my lungs. Don't say that. Then stop acting like you have rights. And for the first time in 5 years, I saw something in his eyes that scared me. Not frustration. Not anger. Control. Possession. You're not taking my son anywhere, he repeated, stepping closer. The space between us felt dangerous. I stepped back. This conversation is over. You don't get to just walk away. I moved toward the door. He grabbed my wrist. Hard. Not playful. Not accidental. Hard enough that I knew there would be bruises. Let go, I said quietly. His grip tightened. You think you can just replace me? The irony almost made me sick. Let go. He did. But not gently. I stumbled back. Heart pounding. And that was the moment I knew. This wasn't salvageable. Not legally. Not emotionally. Not physically. Something had shifted from painful to unsafe. That night I packed a suitcase. Not dramatically. Not angrily. Just methodically. Clothes, documents, bank statements, Pedro's school photos I'd kept copies of. Samantha watched silently. You done? She asked. I nodded. Yeah. You sure? No. But I knew something more important than certainty. I knew I couldn't keep fighting for a place in a house where I was being downgraded. I wasn't going to beg for the right to love a child I'd already given everything to. And the worst part, Pedro had no idea what was about to happen next. Because Alina wasn't done. And Richard's pride wasn't either. And when pride meets custody paperwork, things get ugly fast. I didn't sleep the night before I went back to get my things. Not really. I laid on Samantha's couch staring at the ceiling, watching headlights from passing cars sweep across the walls like silent witnesses. 5 years. 5 years reduced to cardboard boxes. My cousin Derek Hayes pulled up Saturday morning at 9:12 a.m. in his Ford F-150. Ready? He asked gently. No judgment, no questions, just steady. I nodded. I just want this done. When we pulled into the driveway on Maple Ridge Drive, my chest tightened. The flower beds I planted last spring were blooming. The yellow paint I chose still bright against the Texas sun. From the outside, it still looked like a family lived there. Inside, it was already fractured. Richard opened the door before I knocked. His jaw tight, eyes dark, no warmth. You brought backup, he said, looking at Derek. I brought help. He stepped aside reluctantly. Alina wasn't there. That alone told me she knew this was happening. Derek started disassembling the bed frame in what used to be our room. I folded clothes mechanically. Every drawer held memories. Movie ticket stubs, Pedro's Mother's Day card from kindergarten. To Mom, thank you for loving me. I swallowed hard and tucked it into my purse. Richard stood in the doorway watching. You're really doing this? You told me I wasn't his mother. I didn't say you had to leave. I laughed softly. You stripped me of everything that made staying possible. He ran his hands through his hair. This doesn't have to end like this. It already did. Carried the last dresser outside around 11:30 a.m. Neighbors were pretending not to stare. Texas suburbs are like that. Quiet, observant, judging without speaking. I walked back inside one last time to grab a small box from the kitchen. Richard followed. You're overreacting, he said. Am I? You're choosing pride over family. Family, I turned toward him. You reduce me to helpful. You are not his real mother. He shouted it, loud enough that it echoed. And something inside me finally went cold instead of hurt. Then I have no reason to stay. I walked toward the door. And that's when it happened, his hand wrapped around my arm. Not like before. Not a warning. A restraint. You're not walking out like this. Let go. You think you can just erase 5 years. You already did. His grip tightened. My heart started pounding in my ears. Richard, you're hurting me. Stop acting like a victim. Victim. The word hadn't even formed in my mind yet. Let go. Instead, he slapped me. Not a push. Not an accidental swing. A full, open-handed slap across my face. The sound cracked through the room. For a split second, everything went silent. Even the birds outside. Even my thoughts. I tasted blood. And I remember thinking, this is the man I almost married. Before I could even react, Derek burst through the front door. What the hell did you just do? Richard stepped back. It's none of your business. It became my business when you hit my cousin. They shoved each other. It escalated fast. 2 grown men, adrenaline, ego, anger. I stumbled backward, pulling out my phone. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped it. I dialed 911. My ex-boyfriend just assaulted me, I said. My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. Neighbors were outside now. Watching. Whispering. Richard swung first at Derek. Derek hit back. They crashed into the lawn. Grass torn, shouting, chaos. Within 6 minutes, 2 patrol cars pulled up. Red and blue lights, flashing across the same house where we once hosted Pedro's birthday parties. The officer looked at my face. You need medical attention. I'm okay, I whispered. He looked at the red mark, already forming across my cheek. You were struck. Yes. Richard tried to talk over me. She's exaggerating. The officer held up a hand. Sir, step back. Derek explained what he saw. The neighbors confirmed hearing shouting. And when the officer asked me quietly, do you want to press charges? I hesitated. Not because I doubted what happened, but because pressing charges meant something irreversible. It meant Pedro's father. In handcuffs. I looked at Richard. And for the first time, I didn't see the man I fell in love with. I saw someone who felt entitled to control me. Yes, I said. The click of handcuffs echoed louder than the slap. Pedro wasn't home. Thank God. But he would find out. And that knowledge weighed heavier than anything. Richard was charged with misdemeanor assault. Bond, $5,000. Elena called me within an hour. How dare you? How dare I? You're ruining his life. He hit me. You provoked him. There it was. The script. You don't get to rewrite this, I said calmly. Not this time. You've destroyed any chance of being in Pedro's life. I didn't respond. Because deep down, I knew something she didn't. Violence changes custody battles. And for the first time, I wasn't the one legally powerless anymore. By evening, Derek and I were unloading my furniture into a small storage unit. $180 a month, 10x15 space, everything I owned stacked in metal walls. I touched my cheek. Still swollen. Still warm. Samantha hugged me when I got back. "He hit you," she whispered like she still couldn't believe it. Yes. And that one word carried 5 years of misplaced trust. Pedro called that night. "Dad didn't answer his phone," he said. I closed my eyes. "Buddy, something happened." "Is he mad?" "No." "Then where is he?" And I realized I was about to be the one to tell him that his father, the man he loved, was sitting in county jail because he couldn't control his temper. And I didn't know how to say it without breaking him. I thought the worst part of losing Richard was losing the relationship. I was wrong. The worst part was watching a child I love get caught in the fallout of a man's pride. The county jail called at 7:42 a.m. I didn't answer. I already knew what it was. Richard had probably memorized my number by now, probably sitting on a metal bench under fluorescent lights, replaying everything in his head. But I wasn't ready to hear his voice. Not after the sound of that slap still echoed every time I closed my eyes. Pedro called at 9:15 a.m. I sat on Samantha's balcony again, same place as before, but this time the air felt heavier. "Mom," he said. That word again. Soft, uncertain, hopeful. "I'm here, buddy." Grandma Alina picked me up from Lucas's house. Grandma Alina. So she moved fast. "Dad's not answering his phone. Grandma said he's handling adult stuff. What does that mean?" I closed my eyes. There is no manual for this. How do you tell an 8-year-old that his father lost control? How do you protect his heart without lying? "Something happened yesterday," I said carefully. "Did you guys fight?" "Yes." Silence. Then the question that broke me. Was it because of me? My throat tightened instantly. "No, never because of you. This was between adults." "But Dad was mad about me staying with you." I pressed my forehead to the railing. "Pedro, listen to me. Grown-ups are responsible for their own choices, always." Another pause. "Is Dad in trouble?" "Yes." "Did he hit you?" Kids always know. I didn't answer right away. That was answer enough. His breathing changed. Like something fragile inside him cracked. "I don't like this," he whispered. "Me neither. I don't want you to go away." "I'm not going anywhere." And for the first time in weeks, I meant it differently. Not physically, but emotionally. No matter what happened legally, I wasn't disappearing from his life quietly. By noon, I received an email from Alina's attorney. "Yes, attorney." She moved quickly. Subject line: "Request for protective modification of custody arrangement." The irony made my hands shake. They were attempting to argue that the hostile domestic environment, meaning the fight, was destabilizing for Pedro. And they were positioning me as a contributor to that instability. Contributor. Like I'd thrown my own face into his hand. I forwarded the email to Angela Morris. Her reply came 22 minutes later. "This changes things. Come in tomorrow." Angela didn't waste time. "His arrest gives you leverage." Leverage. I hated that word. "This isn't about winning," I said. "It's about stability for the child," she replied calmly. "And the court will see that physical violence in the home is destabilizing." "So what are my options?" "You can petition for temporary visitation, rights under psychological parent doctrine." "And if I do?" "You walk away." It sounded so simple. Walk away. From the child who still called me mom. From 5 years of bedtime stories and scraped knees and science fair projects. "What are my chances?" I asked. "Not guaranteed, but stronger than they were a week ago. And cost. She met my eyes. Minimum $7,500 retainer. I swallowed. That was almost everything I had left. That evening, I finally answered. The jail's automated voice connected us. He sounded different. Smaller. Monica. I stayed quiet. I didn't mean to. You did. I lost my temper. You hit me. Silence. I was scared you were taking him. I was leaving you. He exhaled shakily. Alina's furious. That's not my concern. She says you're trying to destroy us. No, you did that yourself. Another pause. Are you pressing charges? Yes. His breath hitched. You're really going through with this. You crossed a line. He didn't argue. And that scared me more than if he had. 2 days later, Angela called me. Pedro spoke to a school counselor. My heart dropped. About what? He told them he feels like he has to choose between real mom and heart mom. Heart mom. I had to sit down. He said he doesn't want anyone to disappear. Angela's voice softened. That statement could matter. How? It demonstrates emotional attachment. Tears blurred my vision. After everything, he still saw me as heart. Not gap, not helpful, not temporary. Heart. The arraignment was scheduled for Thursday morning. I wore a navy blouse, minimal makeup, covered the fatting bruise with concealer. Alina sat 3 rows behind Richard. Didn't look at me. Didn't need to. Her silence screamed louder than words. Richard pled not guilty. Court date set for 6 weeks out. Temporary no contact order granted. Which meant he couldn't speak to me directly. Everything would go through lawyers. Everything was official now. There was no undo button. That night, I sat alone in Samantha's apartment. Bank app open on my phone. $9,112 in savings. If I paid the retainer, I'd be left with barely anything. No cushion, no safety net. But if I did, I'd slowly fade out of Pedro's life. Not overnight, but gradually. Fewer visits, more distance, new routines without me. Until one day, I'd just be someone he used to know. And I couldn't stomach that. So I transferred the money. $7,500. Retainer paid. Angela confirmed receipt. And just like that, this wasn't emotional anymore. It was legal. Structured. Documented. A battle with paperwork instead of tears. Pedro called before bed. Are you mad at Dad? He asked. I'm disappointed in his choice. Is he bad? No, he made a bad choice. He was quiet. Are you still my mom? I swallowed. I will always be someone who loves you like a mom. That's not what I asked. Kids don't accept technicalities. I smiled through tears. Yes, I'm still your mom. He sighed in relief. Okay. And for the first time since all of this started, I felt steady. Not because it was easy. Not because I knew I would win. But because I finally stopped trying to be chosen. I chose myself. And I chose him. Even if it cost me everything. 6 weeks. That's how long it took for everything to turn into paperwork. 6 weeks of silence from Richard because of the no-contact order. 6 weeks of Alina posting carefully curated photos of Pedro on Facebook like she was rebuilding a brand. 6 weeks of me living out of 2 suitcases in Samantha's guest room, checking my bank balance like it might suddenly grow back what I spent. And then, court day arrived. Family Courtroom 4B. Bixar County. Cold air, beige walls, fluorescent lighting that made everyone look tired and slightly gray. Richard sat at the defense table with his attorney. He looked thinner. Not broken, just stressed. Alina sat behind him, posture straight, hands folded in her lap like she was attending church. Angela sat beside me. "You stay calm," she whispered. "Let the facts speak." Facts? Like love could be bullet-pointed. Her attorney went first. They framed it cleanly. Biological mother returned. Rebuilding bond. Domestic disturbance caused by emotional volatility from former partner. Former partner. That's what I was reduced to legally. They argued that Pedro needed clarity, stability, a single maternal identity. Single. Like a child's heart only had space for one. They painted me as attached but unnecessary. Temporary. Again. Then Angela stood. And she did something Alina's team didn't expect. She requested the court allow the school counselor's written report into evidence. The report included Pedro's exact words. "I feel like if I love Monica, my real mom gets sad. But if I call Alina mom, Monica might disappear. I don't want to choose, I just want both." The courtroom went silent. Even the judge paused. Angela didn't dramatize it. She didn't need to. Then she submitted. Photos of me listed as emergency contact for 5 years. Dental insurance, records under my policy. School tuition, payments from my bank account, totaling $8,420 over 3 years. Medical forms signed by me during 2 ER visits. 5 years of documented presence. Not helpful. Consistent. When Richard took the stand, I didn't look at him. Not at first. But when Angela asked, "Did Ms. Hayes function as a parental figure in your son's life for 5 years?" He hesitated. That hesitation mattered. "Yes," he finally said. "Did your son refer to her as mom during that time?" Another pause. "Yes." "And did you encourage that?" He swallowed. "Yes." The judge made a note. And for the first time, the narrative shifted. This wasn't about me inserting myself. This was about a role I was invited into. Then something happened no one predicted. The judge asked if the child had expressed preference directly to either party. Alina's attorney objected immediately. But the judge allowed limited clarification. And that's when Angela carefully stated, "Your Honor, during a supervised meeting with the counselor, the child stated he does not want to lose Ms. Hayes and views her as his heart mom." Heart mom. The judge looked up. Children do not typically invent that term. Alina shifted in her seat. Her composure cracked for half a second. That was enough. Temporary order issued. Richard retains primary custody, pending assault case resolution. Alina granted structured visitation. Monica Hayes granted temporary bi-weekly visitation under psychological parent consideration. Court-ordered family counseling for Pedro. It wasn't full custody. It wasn't legal motherhood. But it was recognition. Recognition that I wasn't a gap. I wasn't helpful. I wasn't temporary. I was significant. And that word carried more weight than any title. Alina approached me in the hallway. Her heels echoed sharply against tile. "This isn't over," she said quietly. "It doesn't need to be a war," I replied. "You think you're his mother." "No," I said calmly. "I think I'm someone he loves." She didn't have a response to that. Because love isn't a legal category. But it showed up anyway. Richard caught up to me near the elevators. "I didn't think it would go this way." "You didn't think I'd fight." He looked down. "I messed up." "Yes." "I never wanted him to lose you. But you were willing to risk it." He nodded slowly. And for the first time, he looked like someone who understood consequences. Not anger. Not ego. Consequence. That weekend, during my first official visitation, Pedro cried harder than I'd ever seen. Not tantrum crying. Not frustration. Release. I thought you were going to disappear, he said into my sweater. I'm not going anywhere. Dad says things are complicated. They are. I don't want two moms, he said through tears. My heart dropped. But then he finished. I want both. And that was the truth none of the adults wanted to admit. Children don't divide love like property. They multiply it. That night after I dropped him off, I sat in my car for a long time. The streetlights flickered on. The same house stood there. But it wasn't mine anymore. And maybe it never truly was. What I learned through all of this wasn't about biology. It wasn't about court orders. It wasn't even about Richard. It was this. Motherhood isn't claimed. It's proven. And sometimes, it's fought for. But here's the part no one sees yet. The assault case is still pending. If Richard is convicted, custody shifts again. And Alina, she's not done trying to remove me. Not even close. Because next month, there's another hearing. And this one could permanently define where I stand in Pedro's life. The conviction didn't feel victorious. It felt heavy. When the judge said guilty, I didn't look at Richard. Because guilt in a courtroom doesn't erase what already happened. And it definitely doesn't fix what a child feels. Pedro didn't handle it well. Not at first. The week after the verdict, he got sent to the principal's office for pushing a kid who said, "Your dad went to jail." Kids repeat what they hear at home. And shame travels fast in small Texas suburbs. The school counselor called me. He's internalizing responsibility again. Of course he was. Kids don't understand adult pride. They just absorb fallout. Court-ordered co-parenting therapy started 2 weeks later. 3 adults. 1 therapist. 0 comfort. Dr. Mayers didn't let anyone perform. She looked at Richard first. Why did you hit her? Silence. Not defensive this time. Just quiet. I felt like she was taking my son. Dr. Mayers didn't blink. Was she? No. Then what were you afraid of? And that's when it came out. Not rage. Not dominance. Fear. She loved him like I couldn't control. That sentence hit different. Because it wasn't about Alina. It wasn't about biology. It was about insecurity. Dr. Mayers turned to Alina. And you. Alina crossed her arms at first. Then slowly uncrossed them. I missed 5 years, she admitted. And every time he calls her mom, I feel like I failed. There it was. Not rivalry. Guilt. And guilt turns into control if you don't face it. It happened in session 4. They brought Pedro in for the last 15 minutes. He sat between us. Small hands, big feelings. Dr. Mayers asked gently, "What scares you the most?" He didn't hesitate. That someone will leave again. The room went silent. Alina looked down. Richard wiped his face. I stayed still. Because this wasn't about my pain. It was about his. I don't care what name I use, he continued. I just don't want to lose anybody. Kids don't fight over titles. Adults do. At the custody review hearing, something subtle happened. The judge addressed Richard directly. Probation compliance and anger management progress will factor into future custody decisions. Then he addressed Alina. Emotional coercion of a child regarding attachment will not be tolerated. Then he looked at me. Psychological parent status remains in effect. Continue stability. Continue stability. That was my role. Not replacement, not competition. Stability. It didn't happen dramatically. No grand speech. No flowers. Just a quiet moment outside the therapy office. I was wrong, he said. Yes. I let fear turn into control. Yes, I'm sorry. It didn't erase the slap, but it acknowledged it. And sometimes accountability is the only closure you get. Elena stopped correcting him. The first time I heard it, I almost cried. Pedro ran toward her after school and yelled, "Mom!" Then turned to me and said, "Mom, look what I made." No hesitation. No guilt. Just fluid love. And she didn't flinch. That was growth. It wasn't dramatic. It was slow. Messy. Gradual. Shared Google calendars. Therapy notes. Soccer games where we stood 6 feet apart but clapped at the same time. Love didn't divide. It expanded. And here's the truth no courtroom can stamp. I am not his biological mother. I am not his legal mother. But I am someone who stayed when it was hard. And children remember who stays. Probation completed. Custody stable. Counseling reduced to monthly. Pedro asked me something while we were baking cookies. "Are you still my heart, Mom?" "Yes." He grinned. "Good, because I don't think hearts care about paperwork." And honestly, he's right. You can't be replaced if you never left. And I never did. Before you go, ask yourself something. If love isn't defined by blood, then what actually makes someone a mother? Monica stayed. Elena came back. Richard paid the price. But Pedro, he just wanted both. If this story moved you, even a little, hit subscribe for more such stories. See you in the next story. Take care of yourself.